Our speaker today is familiar to Converse and is familiar with us. Ellen Bryant Voigt studied piano as a child and came to Converse to study music. She turned to English and especially to poetry after encountering the work of Cummings and Rilke, but never left behind the influence of the sound. She once said that she writes by sound first, that sound is the generative force, and that poetry does its work through music, which then allows for the exploration of complicated and therefore accurate feelings. Ms. Voigt is known for her exquisitely refined style, once noting that she often writes 50 to 100 drafts before she is satisfied with a poem. Take note, students. In her recent collection, Headwaters, she eliminated all punctuation in her poems. She commented that doing so allowed more excess, more repetition, without me pulling out my scalpel and cutting them out. After completing her Bachelor of Arts at Converse and her MFA at the University of Iowa, Ms. Voigt taught at Iowa Wesleyan College and MIT. She was a founder of the Goddard College Low Residency MFA program in 1976, which was moved to Warren Wilson College in 1981, in which she continued to serve. She served as Poet Laureate of Vermont for 4 years and has received grants from the NEA and the Guggenheim Foundation. She's an elected member of the Fellowship of Southern Writers, served as the Vermont State Poet from 1999 to 2003, and was a Chancellor of the Academy of American Poets from 2003 to 2009. Converse awarded Ms. Voigt an honorary Doctor of Literature degree in 1989, welcomed her as an Elizabeth Boatwright Coker visiting writer in 2003, and invited her to deliver the commencement address in 2007. In that address, which I remember, she told our students to, quote, use your mind and mind your soul. You leave here with a valuable, privileged asset, a liberal arts education, which has its goal to teach one how to think, not how to compile information. That changes faster than we can speak of it. But how to divide the spurious from the real, the false from the true, to leave nothing of your experience unexamined, none of your principles untested. Last year, Ms. Voigt was awarded a MacArthur Fellowship, sometimes called the Genius Grant. Many news stories focus on the generous size of the MacArthur Grant and ignore the reason a person is chosen. The MacArthur Foundation very carefully chooses the few, the very few among us, who have been truly transformative in their fields and who promise significant innovative contributions in the future. A clear description of Ms. Voigt. Please help me welcome the 2016 Founders Day speaker, Ellen Bryant Voigt.
Thank you very much, Dr. Barker, and thank you to the chorale. That was absolutely so beautiful, stunning. President Fleming, Converse trustees, faculty, staff, students, fellow alumni in the Golden Club, my little sister class. I bring warm greetings to all of you from the class of 1964, some of whom are here. When we first arrived, almost 56 years ago, we did seem a rowdy bunch. At that time, we were the largest entering class in Converse history, but a more precise adjective might be impatient or restless. This was, remember, after the lunch counter sit-ins in Greensboro and during the election of the first Catholic U.S. president. As young adults, we were entering history, that very large noun, so much on our minds today. I do not mean to suggest that any of us imagined then an African American in the White House, or perhaps soon a woman in the White House, or Harriet Tubman on the $20 bill, or, Or, as we heard this week, not one, but now 2 women in succession serving Converse as its president. Nor do I mean to claim that we were even politically astute or remotely radical, except within the local conventions of this particular campus. We were President Coleman's girls. If we ventured off campus without male protection, we had to travel in safe packs of 4. We were forbidden adult beverages within a 15-mile radius of Spartanburg. You remember. And in the yearbook photos, we all have pretty much the same hairdo. Except, look, Ma, I'm wearing pants on front campus. When we arrived, we just didn't know yet how to imagine on another scale. But during our 4 years here under the wisteria, we witnessed the assassination of our young, smart, idealistic president. And as we left Converse for the wider world, another election year was underway, one that is strikingly similar to the current political climate. Then, as now, the choice was between polar opposites and the fear of change threw volatile fuel onto ideological fires. In the meantime, our class, got that drinking rule changed. And we also persuaded the college to underwrite participation in racially diverse conferences at other schools. We had discovered the power of verbs over nouns, even a noun as imposing and inexorable as history. There's one very particular verb I want to talk about today. In September 1960, by one of the luckiest strokes of fate, a trustee merit scholarship allowed this particular farm girl from Virginia to enter the Converse School of Music with my own small-scale dream of becoming a high school band director. And by a second miraculous stroke of fate, while I was here, I was actively taught how to think. I'm going to mention that again. I know I said it however many years ago. But thanks to President Fleming's leadership, to the commitment of the faculty, the passionate curiosity of the students, the generosity of trustees, alumni, and other donors, that's the opportunity that Converse still offers. And thinking is what the world desperately needs. More than it needs knowledge, which expands exponentially faster than we can Google it. More than innovation, sometimes the byproduct of hard thinking, but often its own self-justification. More than contempt for convention or blind adherence to convention. 2 sides of the very same coin. Those are attitudes determined too easily by unexamined assumptions. Some more very big nouns. What such nouns so often preclude is the kind of thinking often overlooked as merely preliminary or plodding or trivial, and the very thing I want to champion. In particular, disinterested observing, obsessive, patient, not reaching too quickly for meaning and category, what John Keats called negative capability, which is the essential part of any creative endeavor, distinct from thoughts or wisdom or their popular cousin, self-expression, all of those self-important nouns. Creative thinking is very hard work. It doesn't swagger. It is full of self-doubt. It doesn't dazzle in the blogosphere. It keeps you circling and idling, going nowhere, and yet it is what drives any field of inquiry forward, whether the sciences or the humanities, social sciences, or the arts. because what it circles toward with diligence and a little luck is a thrilling discovery, some congruence between almost any disparate objects you choose to observe. No matter where you enter the web, you can find the spider. Some of you may remember from the study of math those intriguing congruent triangles. They look so different from one another, and yet, if we analyze them, an excellent way to enforce close observation, we see they have in common one angle or one line length or one similarity we had overlooked. In our current culture, differences dominate our public discourse, and passionately held opinion, that big noun, even if unfounded, illogical, or self-serving, is the ruthless czar. Our only hope against its tyranny is open-minded observing, open-hearted discovering, thinking that can reveal deep congruence among disparate, even antagonistic elements. It is what that radical idealist Samuel Coleridge called the primary imagination. Certainly, it was the primary imagination, stimulated by years of observing, that saw the DNA double helix prefigured by a burning ember coiling up the chimney. But where I know it best is in poetry, my own life work, discovered here at Converse. Poems are excellent paradigms for the paradox I'm talking about. A poem is a made thing, a noun, that embodies its making, a verb. A poem is nothing at all if not a means for thinking about the world. It depends utterly on restless, relentless, obsessive observation and on congruence between the poet's experience and the reader's, between the individual and the tribe, between the particular dramatic occasion and the overarching human condition. This is what it makes its language, its final expression, indelible. It's not a prop, it's really quite functional. My example for you today is by Robert Frost, the permanent laureate of Vermont, where I've lived for almost 50 years, and my classmates remember his white-haired presence at the JFK inauguration. The poem I want to share with you is After Apple Picking, and it opens this way. My long two-pointed ladder's sticking through a tree toward heaven still, and there's a barrel that I didn't fill beside it, and there may be 2 or 3 apples I didn't pick upon some bough, but I'm done with apple picking now. Essence of winter sleep is on the night, the scent of apples I am drowsing off. You may not recall metaphor from your lit studies, but the ladder pointed toward heaven and the reference to winter sleep announced right away that Frost has more than just apples on the brain. In business, in sports, in science, in the arts, there's always a cost at harvest time. We may begin our labor with high ideals and expectations, but where we end most often is in a fugue state of exhaustion and insufficiency and regret. The barrel unfilled, the fruit left in the tree. But what Frost says next dramatizes more than fatigue. The poem itself is about thinking. He says, I cannot rub the strangeness from my sight I got from looking through a pane of glass I skimmed this morning from the drinking trough and held against the world of hoary grass. It melted, and I let it fall and break, but I was well upon my way to sleep before it fell, and I could tell what form my dreaming was about to take. I hope you could register the number of active verbs in this passage: rub, got, looking, skimmed, held, melted, let, fall, break, fell, tell, take, plus those verbals drinking, trough, and dreaming. I especially want you to notice the strangeness of the passage. Observing is not passive and bloodless. It engages both left and right brain in the difficult effort to see something clearly without disposition. Frost's speaker was well upon my way to sleep, Before the pane of glass he skimmed off and then peered through, fell and broke. That is to say, he was already in the dream. And what could be more personal, more surreal, individual than dreams? In the poem, in the form my dreaming was about to take, magnified apples appear and disappear, stem end and blossom end, and every fleck of russet showing clear. My instep arch not only keeps the ache, it keeps the pressure of a ladder round. I feel the ladder sway as the boughs bend, and I keep hearing from the cellar bin the rumbling sound of load on load of apples coming in. What dreams do is internalize the external world. What poems do is externalize subjective or interior experience. Both exterior and interior are embodied in this poem in the pressure of the ladder round on the instep arch as the primary imagination does its work. Here's more Frost. And I keep hearing from the cellar bin the rumbling sound of load on load of apples coming in. For I have had too much of apple picking. I am overtired of the great harvest I myself desired. There were 10,000 fruit to touch, cherish in hand, lift down and not let fall. For all that struck the earth, no matter if not bruised or spiked with stubble, went surely to the cider apple heap as of no worth. There is the moral imperative. Those apples not caught are doomed, wasted. This is my favorite part of the poem. The aftermath of endless, self-forgetful, obsessive tasks is disheartening. Equally obsessive, a reckoning of what was not accomplished. And that leaves us overtired, not only from the harvesting, but of the great harvest that we ourselves, not just our parents, not just our teachers, not husbands or any expectant others at all, but what we ourselves had desired. Class of 2016, you will face that soon enough, as my class did. All that was gathered during your years here, and all that was left ungathered. It comes with any achievement, an instructive congruence between picking apples and writing poems and studying cell structure and mastering the oboe and raising children and, yes, ensuring the future of a college in South Carolina. You can see that Frost's metaphor has enlarged considerably, true for the arc made by an individual life. What happened to that ladder pointed toward heaven? We can no longer be confident about the nature of this winter sleep or about waking from it either. But Frost gives us a choice, despite exhaustion and disappointment, confusion and the wish for passivity, and he offers the choice by comparison to an entirely unthinking creature whom he's kept off stage. Here's how the poem ends. One can see what will trouble this sleep of mine, whatever sleep it is. Were he not gone, the woodchuck could say whether it's like his long sleep, as I describe its coming on, or just some human sleep. The woodchuck in hibernation is not remembering apples he failed to eat. He's merely a noun, sustained through winter by layers of stored fat. And there are times when we all wish for such oblivion, to be done with thinking for a while. This surely must be true for President Fleming after more than a decade of active, creative leadership. But I suspect what comes next for her will be the dream-troubled human sleep that Frost described. So I just want to say, Betsy, despite any apples you may have let fall, what we recount are those you harvested, for which we are immensely grateful. And we are confident you carry into the large noun of the future those active verbs with which you have served Converse so well, observing, discovering, thinking, verbs through which we too, every one of us, can shape the history of which we are a part, both in our own time and in the very hard-to-imagine time that will follow us. Thank you.